One political science expert says there is a potential solution to ending the war, but it would not come easy. Scholars believe Israelis were caught off guard by the attack, and Hamas' motivation was to show Israel that the terrorist group is a force to be reckoned with. A Northern Illinois University sociology professor says the best solution would be a two-state solution. This would divide Israel and Palestine into states, giving each of them separate territories and hopefully allowing them to come to a compromise.
The most viable solution out there is to actually have the Palestinians also have their own state. Now, the problem for the Palestinians to have their own state, it means they have to have a cohesive land. So for them to have their state, it will mean you have to move people around. Like literally, you have to But I think if they get to if they become two independent states, we will have far much more peace.